We'll call this meeting to order, the Blackhawk County Board of Supervisors for May 3rd, 2022. Roll call, Mr. Veeder.
Leyland,
Here.
Little, Schwartz,
Here.
Trelka,
Here.
White.
Here. Have a moment of silence to reflect on our actions of the day. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Have the agenda received as proposed or as amended?
So moved?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Recognition, the National Public Health Accreditation Achievement by the Blackhawk County Health Department.
I think Kayla said they pulled that because Nafisa or someone couldn't be here.
Oh,
I think she
Oh.
mentioned that yesterday.
Yeah, we would just like to request to move that to next week so Nafisa can be here if possible. Caitlin, I'm work with Blackhawk County Public Health.
Thank you.
no problem. Thank you. Public comments. Moving on to public comments. Anyone in the boardroom here? Anyone online? Hearing none, moving on to Years of Service Awards. Mr. Veeder.
Yes, we have two today. One is for Rick Wormerskirchen from the Engineer's Office for 20 years of service. And for 30 years of service, Martin McDonald from the Sheriff's Office.
Thank those employees for their years of service. Next is claims and payments. This is a resolution that the Board of Supervisors approve expenditures. Mr. Perry.
This week's expenditures total $113,428.92. Secondary roads makes up $43,267. E911 Service Commission $12,173. The medical examiner $12,564. And finally, Sheriff's Department $15,079. Everything looked good.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. This is a resolution. Please answer as your name is called.
Leyland,
Yes.
Little,
Yes.
Schwartz,
Yes.
Trelka,
Yes.
White.
Yes, resolution adopted. Next is the receive project updates from the department heads and elected officials. Good morning, Kathy.
Good morning, Board. Kathy Nicholas, County Engineer. Just a brief update on the condition of the gravel roads. As you can imagine, they're a bit sloppy right now just due to all the rain we've been having. We are on schedule with placing mile rec. We did start that several weeks ago, so we are on schedule and have almost one district complete now. And I wanted to remind you and the public that this Thursday evening at 6 p.m. at the Dunkerton City Library, in their meeting room there, we will be holding a discussion with nearby residents concerning the fate of the East Bennington Road Bridge. That's the bridge, as you recall, it's been closed for approximately 5 years now. Just to inform the residents that I'm going to be recommending to you, the Board of Supervisors, that we remove the bridge, remove the structure permanently. It's been closed now. So that will be at 6 p.m. at the library. And you are very welcome and would be appreciated if you could attend the meeting. Can I answer any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you.
Morning, Amanda.
Good morning, Amanda Fesemeyer, Human Resources Director. Just want to share with everyone as a reminder that open enrollment has started. It's the month of May, so any staff that are wanting to make any changes outside of a qualifying event with regards to their medical, dental, or vision coverage, they can do that. If you want to keep your current elections, you don't need to do any action. Those will stay the same. We do this through May 31st, and just encourage staff to come to our office if they have questions. The flex spending accounts for dependent care and medical care, those do need to be new enrollments every year. So that's just a reminder. You'll see these flyers posted around. So again, just the departments that open enrollment has started. So, all right, thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Amanda. Morning, Mike.
Good morning. Mike Hendrickson, Director, County Conservation. Just a very quick note, as we enter the busy season for our campgrounds and all the areas that we take care of. For the first time in my long career, we are not at full staff with our seasonal positions. We typically will hire between 9 and 10. We started advertising the day after we came back from the holidays in January. We have 2. We have parks that do not have seasonal employees. So we are working on a lot of different ways to try to manage this for the summer, because like it or not, the grass is going to grow, folks. And park rangers are exploring areas that they just simply will not mow this year. We'll probably be hearing about that from the public if we can't get this fixed, but I don't know how all of a sudden people are going to start coming and applying for these positions, because we're 5 months into it right now and we don't have them. This is not an isolated problem to Blackhawk County. County conservations across the state are all in this boat. We did actually raise our hourly fee or our hourly wages to $12 this year. We had it at $10.50 before that. So I don't think it's the money either. It's just simply what everybody's facing. But we've never been in this position before. We have reached out to all kinds of volunteer groups. We've used social media. We have put this out everywhere. And maybe we're down to the point where we're hoping maybe there will be people out there that just want a little extra money and can put in 20 hours a week and mow after their regular job. So we're open to anything and everything. If you hear people that would like to make some extra money, send them our way, please, because we've got a big season in front of us, and we don't have the seasonal staff. We've never been in this boat before, so just a heads up.
Thank you, Mike.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks, Mike.
Anyone else in the boardroom? Yolando?
Good morning, Mr. Yolando, the Blackhawk County Veterans Affairs. I just wanted to share a few things. The month of May is going to be a very busy month for the veteran community. Just wanted to let the board know that Intercog, the Waterloo Housing Trust Fund, they did approve us to have a $10,000 grant to support our ramps going into through the summer months. So that letter is sent to us, and that we received. I'm going to send back a notification that take part in that. So that's been like the last 4 years for us getting that grant to help support those the ramps that we do, our volunteers do. Real quick, the May 3rd, today, there's the 75th Invasion of Normandy presentation. It's going to be at the airport. That's at 7 p.m. There's a special guest coming in to speak on the different planes that they flew into Normandy. On the 5th of May, we're having a single-mile lunch here for veterans. Just in the spirit of single mile, we're going to provide lunch for veterans here at our facility. On the 21st of May, there's a veteran motorcycle awareness ride, and it'll be at Post 49. On the 26th of May, we'll be out at the Garden of Memories for the Field of Flags. On the 29th of May, there's another Veterans Freedom Rock ride. All of this is building camaraderie. On the 30th of May, we're getting ready for the Veterans Memorial Day Parade and ceremony. And then I just wanted to leave a couple tidbits, is that just this month alone, last month, we had a widow who received $157,000 in back pay for the death of her husband due to exposure to Agent Orange. She put in a claim back in 2012 and fought it all the way through and got finally approved. And so she got a generous portion of her back pay. And so those are the things that keep me in this job and keep me smiling, that we can help not just the veterans, but we're helping the widows. Then the last thing is I want to thank Linda for sending the input. It looks like we got one input for our open commissioner's position. We are out there letting people know that that job is available. We're going to do it all through the month of May to have have some interviews in June to be ready to present to the board whoever we select in July. So with that, that's pretty much all I have. Stand by with this any questions.
Thank you, Yolando. Anyone else? Hearing none, minutes approved for April 26, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Consent agenda by resolution.
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on any of the items? Hearing none, this is a resolution, please answer as your name is called.
Little,
Yes.
Schwartz,
Yes.
Jelka,
Yes.
Leyland,
Yes.
White.
Yes, resolution adopted. Next is proclamations, resolution to proclaim the week of the May 6th to the 12th as National Nurses Week. You have that, Grant? Or are you going to read it? Are you going to read it?
Grant can read it.
Okay.
There's not one in here.
Then I can read it.
Then you-
Caitlin
you wanna
Emmerich
comment?
with Black Hawk County Public Health. We, just to note that the Board of Health also approved this resolution and recommended that the Board of Supervisors consider it as well. The resolution reads, the Black Hawk County Board of Supervisors Proclamation for National Nurses Week, May 6th through 12th, 2022. Whereas nearly 3.2 million nurses in the United States comprise our nation's largest healthcare profession, whereas the depth and breadth of the registered nursing profession meets the different and emerging healthcare needs of the American population in a wide range of settings, whereas a renewed emphasis on primary and preventive healthcare will require the better utilization of all our nation's registered nursing resources, whereas more qualified registered nurses will be needed in the future to meet the increasingly complex needs of healthcare consumers in this community, whereas the depth and breadth of the registered nursing profession has faced unprecedented times that most of us has never imagined, whereas the cost-effective, safe, and quality healthcare services provided by registered nurses will be an ever more important component of the U.S. healthcare delivery system in the future, whereas nurses demonstrate courage, compassion, dedication, and leadership in caring for our impacted communities at great risk and personal sacrifice, whereas the American Nurses Association has declared the week of May 6th through 12th as National Nurses Week in recognition of the professional integrity and essential value of our nursing workforce. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the Board of Supervisors have declared the week of May 6th through 12th, 2022 as National Nurses Week in Black Hawk County, Iowa.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Do you have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? This is a resolution, please answer as your name is called.
Schwartz,
Yes.
Jelka,
Yes.
Leyland,
Yes.
Little,
Yes.
White.
Yes, resolution adopted. Other business. Motion that the Black Hawk County Board of Supervisors authorize the county auditor to destroy the following payment invoices. Fiscal year 17-18 and board minutes, rough drafts 7-14 to 6-15.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on this item? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Next is a resolution that the request for purchase of capital equipment submitted by LU Information Technology Director be approved and direct the chair to sign for same to purchase 5 Fortinet firewalls for $70,800 from CDWG at an estimated cost of $84,000.
Morning,
Al?
Board. Al Yu, IT Director. As I emailed you, these are switches that are essential for helping us move all our processes back in-house. Do you have any questions?
You mentioned, Al, you were going to be utilizing 22 budgeted funds, I believe, for
Correct.
this, in place of what previously you were planning to do with ARPA.
Yep, this was originally for ARPA, but due to shipping delays, I didn't want to wait any longer. I believe some of the switches already have a slight delay, so I just want to get on this as fast as possible, so not to delay the transition.
Any idea of when that could possibly be?
I believe one of them says about 60 days, so we're kind of cutting it real close, but we're hoping it'll get here soon.
So is that making you have to delay a purchase of something else? Or that's some funds that you have in the budget?
No, it just means we would have to go month to month with our MSP because the current equipment is leased through them. So.
Okay. I appreciate your efforts in trying to get that going, but.
Yeah.
Any further questions? This is a resolution. Please answer as your name is called.
Trelka,
Yes.
Leyland,
Yes.
Little.
Yes.
Yeah, we don't have.
I don't think we have a motion.
You're right.
Oh, sorry.
Oh,
I'll make that motion.
second.
Moved and seconded. Now, try it again.
Okay, I'm gonna say Schwartz, Trelka.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Trelka,
Yes.
Leyland,
Yes.
Little,
Yes.
Schwartz,
Yes.
White.
Yes, resolution adopted. Next, the resolution that the tax sale certificate assignment, 8 vacant lots located in Waterloo, Iowa. Certificate pursuant to 446.31 of the Code of Iowa, and agrees to pay the full amount of delinquent taxes due totaling $8,772.50 plus the $80 assignment fee, be approved for the said certificates of purchase of tax sale, be assigned to Cedar Cultivation LLC as recommended by Rita Schmidt, County Treasurer. Rita?
Rita Schmidt, Treasurer. Cedar Cultivation had approached for 14 vacant lots. 8 of those lots, for this resolution, they're willing to pay the full redemption amount that's due on the parcels. And just going forward, the next resolution is for the other 6 vacant lots in Waterloo. And these certificates date back to 2002 in delinquent taxes. And there's willingness to pay all taxes and special assessments as principal and no interest. So that was what their compromise amount is for.
Any further questions for Rita?
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, that's the resolution. Please answer as your name is called.
Leyland,
Yes.
Little,
Yes.
Schwartz,
Yes.
Trelka,
Yes.
White.
Yes, resolution adopted. Next is a resolution of tax sale certificate of assignment for 6 vacant lots located in Waterloo, Iowa. Pursuant to 446.31 of the Code of Iowa, be approved, and said certificates of purchase of tax sale be assigned to Cedar Cultivation LLC as recommended by Rita Schmidt, County Treasurer.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions for Rita? Hearing none, this is a resolution. Please answer as your name is called.
Little,
Yes.
Schwartz,
Yes.
Trelka,
Yes.
Leyland,
Yes.
White.
Yes, resolution adopted. Next, a resolution that the compromise offered in the amount of $7,385 plus a $60 assignment fee by Cedar Cultivation LLC on taxes owed for 6 vacant lots. Certificate located in Waterloo be approved.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions for Rita on this? Hearing none, that's the resolution. Please answer as your name is called.
Schwartz,
Yes.
Trelka,
Yes.
Leyland,
Yes.
Little,
Yes.
White.
Yes, resolution adopted. F is a resolution that the revision of the Public Purpose Services application be approved as recommended by Michael Trinan, Assistant County Attorney.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on this item? Mr. Trinan, you got anything you want to say?
Only that this was revised to bring it into compliance with the directive from the state auditor.
Thank you, sir.
Did you come up with suggestions, or did you want us to discuss that for the dates? I think we wanted to put it online as soon as we could, but we needed to change the dates that I think we had listed in there.
I had figured the board would discuss what the dates would be, but the bottom line is, I think we want those to be completed along with any presentations by the end of June, so that it's in time to be funded beginning fiscal '23.
Is that critical? I guess that was one of my questions. I guess to think that we need to give people application time, since right now, if we posted it right now and then said, I think the dates that you had in there were listed
Because
very immediate.
Because these organizations would be providing services during fiscal '23, and we're
hiring them to do that if indeed we choose to do so. It seems that the dates should be, or that this process should be completed in time that they begin at the beginning of fiscal '23.
So we need to notify, I guess, I'm assuming a lot of people or anyone, I guess, to get that word out, because I think the first date you said for submission deadline was April 30th?
The date that was contained in the original document that I was provided had been February. At the time that I prepared proposed revisions, I believe we were still in April, so April 30th was workable. At this point, we would want to change that so that you'd give them at least a week or so, I would think, to be able to prepare something and get it in.
Well, that's what I wondered, if May 30th was at least acceptable.
I think that could work.
Something like that.
And I think that gives the board plenty of time, too, to evaluate it during the month of June then.
And then we still wanted presentations, I guess, in June then as well.
Yes. Yes, I would agree to that.
So maybe that last 2 weeks, something like you similarly proposed.
Yep.
Like the first couple of weeks, then we'd review them. The second couple, we might ask for presentations.
Yes, and traditionally, these kind of presentations took place during budget time because the budget was for each, any organization that was hired specifically. Now, during budget time, we've set aside an amount of money. We know what our limit is. We just have to choose whether and who will receive that money.
Okay.
What was the dollar amount we set aside?
100,000.
Any other questions?
And we'd make notification by June 30th or something like that. Does that sound right? Or similarly?
It does.
Okay.
Yep.
That worked for Okay.
And so whatever the board meeting is before then, that would be the time to make that decision, if not earlier.
Thank you, Mr. Train.
Thanks, Mike. I know it was a lot more
Very
difficult than you thought. I mean, than we all thought, I think, to change that application. There were a lot of things that needed changed, so thank
Yep.
you.
It was a process.
Hearing no further discussion, any further questions?
Did we make a motion on that?
Yep.
Super.
This is a resolution. Please answer as your name is called.
Trelka,
Yes.
Leyland,
Yes.
Little,
Yes.
Schwartz,
Yes.
White.
Yes, resolution adopted. Next, discussion ARPA funding with Miranda Wendelant from Clifton Larson Allen.
Good morning.
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 Do I have the option to share my screen?
Yes.
Yes, you should. Just a moment.
Are you able to see that?
Yes.
All right. Good morning. I'm Miranda Wetland with Clifton Larson Allen. I am the lead on the county's financial statement audit. But this morning I'm joining you to discuss a little bit about the ARPA grant management and some of the single audit consideration tied to that grant. The county received a significant federal grant in 2021 and has until 2024 and 2026 to fully expend those funds. So we thought now might be a good time to kind of get into what it means to really manage a federal grant of that size. So high-level overview, on March 11th of 2021, the American Rescue Plan Act was signed into law, and that provides for $360 billion to be distributed to states and local governments. This is a significant federal grant, and the program is called the State and Local Fiscal Relief Funding. There's a lot of other items approved in the Rescue Plan Act, but for the purposes of this presentation, I'm just going to call it the federal funding, ARPA, so know that I'm referring to the State and Local Fiscal Relief Funding. So the funds provide for significant federal funds to smaller governments that may not have a comprehensive federal grant management program in place. This is a once-in-a-lifetime federal grant program. I don't anticipate small governments receiving this size federal grants in the future. So governments are finding themselves in a position in some of the smaller communities that they don't have the infrastructure in place whether that be the accounting systems, tracking mechanisms, or just the human hours available to administer a grant of this size. So with that, Treasury did modify some of the requirements for smaller governments. So those receiving less than $10 million were able to claim a revenue loss and apply those federal grants to government services to really reduce the administrative burden of administering a federal grant program. Due to the size of Blackhawk County, your allocation is in excess of that $10 million threshold. So therefore, you need to really look at what that means for the county and what type of grant program needs to be in place in order to properly manage and distribute these funds in a manner that's compliant. So if we look at the timeline, the program or the act was passed in March of 2021. Pretty soon after that, the Treasury was able to issue an interim final rule that describes some of the eligible and ineligible uses of funds. That gave small governments or local governments the starting point. It was interim information that got governments thinking about what are some of the potential uses of the funds. But really, governments didn't get a final rule or final guidance. Things continued to change throughout 2021. So that final guidance was not issued until January of 2022 and didn't even become effective until last month, April 1st of 2022, that final rule became effective. So that's kind of where we're at right now. A lot of governments that we work with kind of hit the brakes or hit pause in 2021 to wait until the federal guidance was available. And now really is the time to start acting, building those federal grant programs and getting the funds out into the community. Funds do need to be obligated by December 31st of 2024 and fully expended by December 31st of 2026. Any unexpended funds will need to be returned to the Treasury. So there's been several grants, federal grants provided to government in the last 2 years related to the pandemic. Some of those were considered financial assistance, and the level of auditing was very limited. The ARPA funds are subject to the full federal audit. Therefore, any spending under the program does need to be in compliance with the Uniform Grant Guidance. That can be found within the Code of Federal Regulations. It's Title II, Part 200. And that really governs how the federal grants are administered. It covers cost principles, audit requirements, procurement requirements. It really gives the government an outline of how the federal grant program needs to be structured in order to be compliant. And it does require that the county have written grant policies in place that are in conformity with the Uniform Guidance. So the way ARPA is set up is that it's really project driven. All of the reporting and spending should be based on different projects that are structured within the Treasury portal. There's 7 different categories that can be selected when determining what type of project to create. And then within those 7 expenditure categories, there's 81 different subcategories. So this really is a big program. There's a lot of different options and flexibility within the ARPA Act, but there's a lot of record keeping that needs to be done in order to comply. So if we look at just public health as one of those expenditure categories, this is from the reporting guidance issued by the Treasury. You'll see that there's 14 different expenditure categories under public health. And then each one of those, there's a little caret there. There's additional information that needs to be collected regarding whether the projects are primarily serving disproportionately impacted communities. So the demographic information needs to be retained, as well as the support for the additional costs. In addition, for each program or project that is submitted, there should be a narrative description of the structure and objectives of assistance programs, including the detailed information on the public health or negative impact that was experienced. And then in addition to that, a description of how the county responded and how that's proportional to the public health and negative economic impact of COVID-19. So a lot of those non-revenue loss categories need to be tied directly back to the pandemic and the impact that the communities felt as a result. In addition, when you're looking at the individual program costs, for any payment that is in excess of $50,000 to a vendor, there's quite a bit of additional information that needs to be tracked in order to get all of the information properly reported in the Treasury website, our Treasury portal. The reporting will need to be done on a quarterly basis through the end of the grant. So that was just one of 7 expenditure categories. So when the county goes to put a plan in place to spend these funds, it's important upfront to identify exactly which expenditure category the project is eligible under, and really get an understanding of the data that needs to be collected in order to make reporting easier on the back end. You don't want to get into a position where you've expended the funds, and then when you go to report to Treasury, you don't have the information necessary to show how the project was truly eligible under the Act. So we recommend that counties receiving in excess of $10 million look at developing and implementing a pretty formal grant management program. That would require written procedures and policies. A management program would contemplate an internal control system. When we come in as auditors, the control is just as important as the compliance piece from the Single Audit Act perspective. We need to see that for every transaction that was dispersed, that there was a review and approval process in place, and that review is documented. Any reports that are submitted to Treasury should have that similar review and approval process in place. So taking a look as you build out this grant management program and really look at who's going to be preparing the reports, who's generating the invoices and the payments, and who's going to be the overall review, taking responsibility for the compliance piece of the program. Taking a look at your accounting system is also important. There's a lot of record keeping that needs to be done. So looking at whether or not the accounting system can handle that to get you the information you need to do proper reporting to Treasury, as well as get the information in a form that's GAAP compliant for your year-end reporting. Taking a look at record keeping, that could include, the documentation of the procurement history. Who's maintaining the records? Is it all collected in one spot? Is there going to be a folder that accumulates all of the records tied to one project? Or is that going to be a more decentralized process? Monitor spending and period of performance. You've got a couple of years to spend the funds, but that time is going to go by fast. So who's going to be monitoring to make sure that projects are occurring at the rate necessary in order to fully expend the funds, get the funds into the community before that period of performance ends. And then department input. There's a lot of money here, and often the departments are probably more in touch with what the needs are in the community. So there may be department input or understanding the needs within the county itself and some of the eligible costs that could benefit the county. So who's going to handle department input and training? What does that look like internally? And then does there need to be a needs assessment? Are you going to spend the funds all internally, or is there going to be kind of an outward-facing piece of the grant, getting information from the community to determine where the needs are in order to disperse the funds based on the nature of how the grant was approved? So getting into the needs assessment, we're seeing that counties are getting out into the community. There's community input through meetings, surveys, relying on those department heads really to provide input on where the needs are in the community and how the funding can best serve the community. Consider partnering with other municipalities. You can check in to see what, the city of Waterloo also got a very large disbursement, federal disbursement, looking at what programs they're implementing, and if you can partner with them to further the dollar, further the benefit. And finally, I would recommend developing a plan or budget based on needs. So once you've done all that information gathering, and you may very well be through that stage of the grant already, but putting together an overall plan, and that could tie back to those 7 different categories. How does the board want to direct the use of the funds based on the information that's been provided? And once you kind of have that overall outline, then it becomes about dispersing funds in a manner that kind of aligns with your overall plan. So if you have 20% that you want to invest in public health, 20% in infrastructure, when you're reviewing and approving different projects, looking at how those individual projects feed into your overall grant plan. We recommend doing this through county collaboration. We're seeing counties are pulling together a grant committee. This is a lot of work for one individual to kind of oversee, and just frankly, there are not enough hours in the day to get through a grant program of this size for one person. So I recommend 3 to 4 people within the county kind of take the lead on the grant administration, consider including a board supervisor. I did take a look at a presentation that was done to another Iowa County board, and their committee included 12 individuals. So they really had a very comprehensive team made up of different individuals from throughout the county, different backgrounds, different involvement in the committee. I'd recommend starting with the 3 to 4 employees and building out from there depending on the program you want to implement. But that committee would ultimately be responsible for compliance. They're reviewing and approving those projects and making sure that they align with the overall direction from the board on the grant programs. And that way, when the projects come to the board, you know they've been reviewed, they're compared against that final rule, and you can feel comfortable giving that overall final review and approval because you know that someone's taken the time to really vet that project and make sure that it complies. So with that, our recommendation for getting the information would be to have departments or community members apply for federal funds. The county would create some sort of application to be an internal application, and that is where they say a department is applying for funds. They would outline the planned use of funds, the demographics. They'd really get all of the information needed for compliance into one place. It would all be documented, and it would really be useful for the reporting side to the Treasury. Also from an audit perspective, if everything is summarized in one spot and the review and approval is documented right on that application, it would make the audit go very, very well. So the committee would review those applications, verify the allowability, so that at that point we have 2 levels of review. The department submitting the application would review the federal guidance. They're comfortable that their program is an allowable use of funds. The committee would do their review, and then when it comes to the board, it would be a 3rd level of review. So when you're looking at your grant management policy, there's a lot of different things to consider. Just looking at overall formalizing procedures. A lot of this stuff is informally done within county government. So to take it to the next step to formalize, that's why we're recommending putting a committee together, getting together to discuss how often are grant applications going to be accepted, what's the method of submission, how often does the committee meet, where's documentation saved and stored, who reviews and approves, how is it documented. There's a lot of different factors that go into a formal grant management policy. So we're also considering, we're seeing a lot of governments are working with a consultant. This is a big undertaking, and to have someone that specializes in federal grant programs, they understand the audit side of it, uniform guidance, and they've spent a lot of time working with the American Rescue Plan Act, the final rule, the Treasury guidance, They can walk alongside that county committee and provide guidance as needed, either internal training, if there's a questionable item as far as whether or not it's allowability, they can assist with some of the research and follow-up, provide checklists, timelines, help facilitate meetings. We're really seeing a lot of value in having a consultant work alongside the county management to administer a federal grant. Most federal grants, and this one is not any different, do include, administrative as part of the cost of operating a grant like this. So those consultant fees would be chargeable under the grant. So when we go to audit the program, we follow the OMB guidance and the compliance supplement that's issued for this program specifically. So there are 12 compliance requirements that the county is responsible for complying with on each federal grant. Each federal disbursement needs to comply. As auditors, we're going to be looking specifically at activities allowed, cost principles, period of performance, procurement suspension and debarment, reporting and subrecipient monitoring. That's really going to be the focus of our testing when we come out to audit the program. But it is important that the county consider all of these items. So if you're purchasing equipment, you want to make sure you're following the record-keeping side of the equipment purchases. When you're making a purchase, you want to follow the uniform guidance on procurement, suspension, and debarment, and make sure all of that documentation is retained, as well as the internal control side of that it is all reviewed and approved. So, with that, there's a lot of information. Are there any questions or discussion items on the ARPA grant and the county's stage in the grant cycle right now?
Miranda, you mentioned the written procedure and policies. Is that something that should be formalized also, like by board approval, or are those just kind of best practices or recommended that we do those things?
So the written policies are required. It would be best practice for the board to review and approve those policies. It is my understanding from auditing the federal grants in the past at the county that the county has a really good start on those policies already.
I was going to say, we have a grant policy.
We have a grant policy.
So it's great.
And currently, the grant policy, there's policy review committee has approved a change that allows the threshold levels that were stated in that policy to move with the changes in federal regulations. So that will probably come before the board next week.
Okay. Great.
And that was done at the most recent policy meeting?
Yes, that was done. It was a good policy from the get-go. It was created in 2018, but the figures were out of date in it, the threshold figures.
That's great.
And the committee seems like a very, very good idea.
Yeah. I suppose we need to formalize that maybe also. I know you put on the $10 million resolution for next week for us to approve.
There is, that's correct. There's a resolution that was discussed in meeting between Miranda, James, Billy, Jen, and myself as to how to accept or designate the lost revenue portion of the funding. But I believe board action is necessary in order to designate or to create this committee and then to put people on it.
And I guess as it relates to that, I was going to say Miranda had mentioned, starting off with the small group, and obviously we could enlarge it as different things occur, I guess, as in the process. So would we need to specify the individuals in that? I would, like other committees, I would assume, and then add to it later?
Yes.
Probably.
I think at this point, I know there's been a willingness of a handful of people in the auditor's office. James has expressed a willingness. I'm willing to serve on it. I agree with Miranda's suggestion that we have a supervisor on it. I think that way things get communicated better to the board if we have that. So there's definitely people who are willing and able to serve on this committee.
Al, can we add Miranda back on screen, please? guess I feel she's a part of this, and if there's questions for her, I guess I don't want to just look at the screen. Thank you. Well, and I thought maybe the committee, I know James sent out an email, but prior to his vacation, and mentioned as far as the committee members kind of recommending a small group there to get going on it and to do it quickly and making some progress on all of this, since there's a lot to cover quickly, it looks, for some of the things.
Yeah, right now, the process that we're doing is, we're meeting with the department heads, we're getting an idea of where their expenditures or where their projects fall into the expenditure category, and then from that moment, we take it to the board, and that's what we've approved in phase 1 and phase 2. After discussing with Miranda, having an actual document with signatures signing off on it and having more than a few people look at it, that formalizing that process in and of itself is the idea behind this committee. So, I'm fully behind on that.
So I assume we need some type of a timeline from the committee, I guess, on how this all proceeds and what we're doing on the front end, I guess. Just questions, I guess, to get going on it, since we have projects out there that are pending. And
the way I see it is, if we were to get a committee together as soon as next week, we would meet essentially right away, and then the projects that are pending, those would be our highest priority to get documentation done, and then send it off to the board and move that forward for final approval.
And obviously you've already had some meetings. You've been meeting and working on this and talking about a process in place and how you were going to go about it. Sounds like, so it's just kind of.
Yeah, it would be exactly as Miranda brought that out. Is it would just be a little bit more of an application process, and then that way we can get the department heads' ideas of where their projects fall within the expenditure category. That gets brought to the committee. The committee reviews it, acts on it, and then it submits to the board for final approval. So just having those processes in place and actually having, rather than a verbal approval or anything verbal, it's all written down, signed off, and expressed on documentation. So,
are we close to having, I guess, like the worksheets or the approvals or those forms and that type of thing, so that the department heads can get started on those things?
Yeah, we are. There's checklists that we're looking to send out, and there's application process or application templates out there that we can kind of.
We've got to tweak a procurement checklist right now. We've created and will be reviewing with the committee immediately once a committee gets formed a list of documentation that needs to be included in each of these files. And then, of course, we'll have to determine where these files are stored so anyone who needs to view them can access them. But the process has already started. Just because we know it takes some time to get a committee formed, we want that committee to be able to hit the ground running.
Well, this is a specific question, I guess. I know I addressed it, or I sent an email, I think, to James, I know, prior to Leah's going on vacation, but I think I've mentioned it to you and Billy, as well as Miranda, probably as well. We had some projects that we pulled off the agenda, and I'll take the responsibility for asking that until we had this meeting and more clarification on the process and what we need to do for an audit. And some of those had timelines, and I'm thinking particularly, I know there's others out there that you mentioned that there would be priorities and would need to move to the top of the list for evaluation or analysis or whatever, making sure we have the proper things done. But there were some conservation projects that were very timely. I don't know if the digitizing project was a timely one too. It could have been, but that was one Sandy had also on there that we pulled. I remember, just to think of a couple. I knew Mike's did and had a timeline of May 10th.
So my understanding is that conservation probably has the only one with a hard and fast timeline right now, and I'm going to verify this with conservation before they depart from today's meeting. But my belief is that is that a change order?
Actually, we've got a couple that, one is a purchase.
Okay.
That will go by the wayside if we don't meet a May 12th deadline.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry. Thank you.
Didn't mean to put you on the spot.
Mike don't have a moment.
Thank
No,
you.
I apologize. And obviously, we've been the squeaky wheel with all of this, but When we were given the okay to move, we moved, and so we've really positioned ourselves in a bad spot because I don't know what the application process is going to look like, but I think we could move through that fairly quickly. But if we don't even have it, we have one of the big projects. Our engineer is sitting and waiting on the Cedar Valley Nature Trail. We stopped them from doing what they're doing, and Mother Nature kind of takes over at some point, and it increases their hours of work and things like that. So yes, there's a purchase involved that has a straight up deadline. If we can't meet it, then that's off the table, and we go back to ground zero again. The Cedar Valley Nature Trail engineering is very, very tight too. We've held them about as long as we can hold them, and if we can't give them the go ahead fairly quickly, even a week's going to hurt us here, but it looks like that's kind of where we are. So,
Well, I'm kind of wondering if we can't, because we take action next week to formalize everything, if Mike can't, I think the 10th was given as a possibly, we were okay with the 10th, so that is next Tuesday. So if there's things we can put in place and have ready to go and do the actions, take the formal actions that we need to prior to, first on the list of the agenda or whatever, but then have those same agenda items back on for approval.
The plan is to do whatever can be done before the board meeting next week,
Yes.
so that this can take place more or less simultaneously, because there's a hard and fast deadline, as I understand it. Mike, May 10th, Board of Supervisors meeting, is that early enough?
I think it has to be. I think
I think
this is what
Cherie's
we planned
email
on,
to us
Cherie.
after we kind of pulled, it was that the 10th would work. We were okay with it. We could
Okay.
move on by the 10th, so that was my question.
So, and we are not, we're not ignoring this stuff.
No.
We have kind of contingent procedures for items that were expensed earlier and items like this. So the idea is to keep this process moving while at the same time hitting the ground running with this committee process.
Sure. And I knew that you were working hard to get this done. I just thought too, that May 10th deadline was like almost like to me a drop dead deadline that we needed to meet. So if there's any way we could do it, and it sounds like then we can, because I knew Mike was more than ready to make the case or fill out the worksheet or whatever documentation he needed to do from your department to make those go forward. But
Yep. And I, fortunately, I kind of have some experience with the process that the Conservation Department took leading up to this point. And I think the transition will be smooth because their preparation's been good to this point.
yeah, you've probably worked with more federal procurement programs.
do.
and
I mean,
dollars and
we've been
grants.
through a lot of it, and Cherie's here, and she typically deals with all that. I mean, when we talk about flooding and FEMA, we've been through a lot of it, and so we do understand the system fairly well. Obviously, this is different, but in some ways, and in some ways, it'll be very similar too. And that's how we approach these projects too. That's why we did move, we thought, in the right direction with things like federal procurement and different things like that. So we took that into consideration before we did any of this stuff.
You did, and we knew with your engineering costs, you were kind of making us aware when we put these things into place, there were going to be timelines and things too. So I appreciate that you took the time and extended it. But so yeah, I hope that we could move it forward, and that sounds great, like we can. So if that meets with us going forward on that, those were the ones I guess I'm particularly concerned about, that we have some out there that priority list and that people are concerned about, and how we were addressing those kind of in immediate timelines. Just to either go forward, not go forward, or any of those that are rise to that level, I guess.
Yeah, the other thing that I want to make mention is, we have, as I'm tallying these up, we have about 101 potential projects out there, and so the reporting on that is quite cumbersome. We have 89 that are approved, but not one of them do we really think that there's an issue with. It's just we just need to, go back and potentially document a little bit harder, a little bit, and just kind of clean that up from an auditing perspective. So I agree with Mike. These things that have already been approved, I think will really, kind of just get the green light. We just need to look it over, approve it, sign it, and document it, and it really shouldn't take that long of a time. So
We'll remind you of that, that you said that. No, that's good. I said yeah, good. I appreciate the fact that you're moving forward on it and trying to get things done as quickly as possible. So for these types of projects especially, I know purchasing some of the things that we had in there, obviously there isn't the urgency. It's just something that everybody wants to do, but.
Yeah, compliance considerations were there from day one. The bigger issue now is just ensuring documentation and access.
Great. Super.
And before I step down, I just and the way this stuff all starts to roll and twist as we go, and as we try to maximize the funding that we can come up with, especially when we're talking about the Cedar Valley Nature Trail. We talked about a large sum of money here, and we thought that it does fit ARPA criteria right from the beginning, and I think that's probably not even a question. But along the way, other things get thrown into it, and this is sort of the boat we're in now. I just wanted to make you aware. I'm not asking for anything right now. We'll fill you in. The Destination Iowa came along here about 3 weeks ago. I did present to you that we would be applying for something. We didn't know what. We have done a lot of research. We've made a lot of phone calls, a lot of emails, worked with a lot of people here, and we found out along the way, and this thing has kind of changed day by day too, but we found out along the way that our best opportunity to help out with funding to the point of what we look at right now, a little over $1.5 million that we could apply for Destination Iowa to help with the Cedar Valley Nature Trail, which would loosen up ARPA dollars for other things. Our best opportunity is to team with Lynn County Conservation. We've been having those conversations, and we're in the process of, we're in the preliminary area of putting together a grant application with Lynn County Conservation to connect that trail, that 16.5 miles. They have 6.5 miles, we have 9.5 miles that aren't hard surfaced. And from all indications that we get from everyone we've talked about, that is a really, really good grant. Lynn County will benefit from it, we will benefit from it, and we will finish that connection, and then everyone has the opportunity to benefit. So that being said, we have to have, at some point, we'll need a commitment to be able to write that grant, a commitment of the 60%. And we have all those numbers, and I'm not going to put them out there now, but this is what happens. What looks good with that Destination Iowa grant is that we are providing ARPA dollars to go together. And as soon as Lynn County saw that we were doing that, it's just going to make that a better grant. It's going to score better and the whole thing. So anyway, that and this thing's changing by the day. We found all this out last week, and we've been hustling and hustling. We have a big meeting with them this week. So, we'll be asking those questions. So whenever these forms or applications come out that we can start working on to get them to you, timing is pretty critical on that too. So,
Did you say there was a dollar amount for this total project, or you were not going?
What we would be looking at for that application is only Division 1, and we talked about that. That would be the paving of the trail, the 9.5 miles of trail, all the way down to where our responsibility ends. There is a bridge involved in there and a couple of culverts, but it looks like right now total cost on that project would be about $3.3 million. That does not include construction engineering. The construction engineering would be about another $500,000. So we could look at about a $4 million project. We would be applying for 40% of that, which is a little over $1.5 million, which would cut the ARPA dollars we would be asking for just for Division 1 down to about $2.3 million. And we'd probably have a little leeway in there, so we'd probably be saying about 2.5. But that's a big chunk we knock out of that if we can get this grant. And so it's critical that, and this grant, I think, has a really, really great chance to go through. That's what we've been told anyway. And working with Lynn County, that only bolsters it. So
did that have a pretty tight timeline too? I'm trying to think of the timeline for that.
The situation with Destination Iowa is this. They started accepting grant applications May the 9th. Lynn County, we've been told that the sooner you get them in, the better. Now, I'm not hooked to that date. I think we have plenty of time. I think any time in the first 30 days to 40 days to get that application in will be good. But the way that money will be doled out is when it's gone, it's gone. There's a rolling deadline to December of 2022. But we've been told by the powers that be in Des Moines that money will be gone well before that. So everybody has the mindset that the sooner the better. But then again, we've watched webinars, we sat through a lot of that stuff. We've made those phone calls, and they said, make sure you have a good grant application. So we will be working with Lynn County this week on that. We'll be looking at Intercog to write that for us, and we will make sure that it's good. So the timeline on that, yes, it's tight. I think we have a better opportunity to get it there as soon as we can get it there, but we'll do it the right way. And it isn't like we need this one tomorrow, but it's important information that we get to you guys. So,
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Miranda, I did have a question for you. You mentioned earlier about the Board of Supervisors, or sometimes the planning, the directing the use of funds and making an outline or whatever for disbursement. I'm assuming not everybody does that? Or if there have been a lot of counties that have done that or not, or I guess just how they go about that, or if that is something even we wanted to do.
From what we're seeing, a lot of the grants are being allocated to the different categories based on some type of needs assessment. Either they opened up applications to the public, and nonprofits applied for funds, other municipalities may have applied for funds. And then departments are making requests for funds, and then it kind of takes that information and they develop an overall plan. Just kind of having the roadmap versus looking back to see what was done, having the plan in place ahead of time.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. I saw that kind of as a difficult part to do. I don't know, to actually look at so many needs in the community, and if we were to decide to do any of that with our funding, yeah, how we'd go about that. So there's probably sources of help with that out there too, I suppose.
Any other questions?
No, it's a question you guys can ask later.
I was just going to touch base a little bit on that consultant that Miranda brought up. Like I stated, we're looking at 101 potential projects and 89 approved projects, and we haven't even allocated half of this. So, right now we are kind of in a lull time between budget and between audit, and we are finalizing the amendment. And so that is something that I am a proponent of, is having someone to actually be able to, bounce ideas off of with the committee, or help with the reporting aspect of it. Make sure, that treasury portal online is very cumbersome. It's very confusing. It seems as though there's many issues going on with it right now, and so having that outside person would help us out pretty tremendously. So I don't know if there needs to be board action on that by any means, but I just wanted to put that thought in place that June 30 is pretty close. It's right around the corner, and that's when audit season starts. And then as we know, before we know it, we're back in budget. So it's going to get busy for a lot of people around here, me included. And so having that person to be able to help with that is really going to help the process. So.
Well, it is something. Yeah, it is something we could consider as we go, though. I mean, we're kind of in a rush period right now to work through, but I assume that's going to kind of be our committee, not an outside consultant so much we'd need.
No, but yes, you're right. It would be an internal committee, but it would be an outside agency that knows ARP,
I know,
like the back of their hand,
yeah,
and so
for the expertise.
someone that we can just kind of the committee can consult with, and just kind of make sure that our I's are dotted, our T's are crossed, and is there anything that we're missing, that kind of thing. So and like I said, someone to look at the reports that we're submitting to the U.S. Treasury is helpful as well. So
we have a pretty good comfort level to start this process, though, without that.
Oh,
don't
absolutely.
we?
Yes.
And I would think perhaps we could reach out to firms that hold themselves out as providing this kind of service, maybe feel them out for their terms. I mean, would that help the process at all?
I don't know, maybe terms, I guess, exactly who does it, what they do, and that type of thing, maybe information about them.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I'm ready yet to jump on that wagon yet, but.
I agree. I think there's a lot more information that needs to be brought to the board. I just wanted to,
Yeah.
I guess, plant that seed and let the board know that that's something that's out there. Miranda brought it up, and I'm a proponent of it, so I think we should look into it and see what they can do.
And I think that's part of the looking in or gathering of that information so that the board can make an informed decision on that question.
Yeah.
Probably be a good issue for the committee to discuss and bring a recommendation to the board.
It's
I think that makes sense.
more information.
Assistant, more or less.
Huh?
Of someone to help them, you mean?
Yes,
Well,
yes.
more information
Bring
about
it
how,
exactly.
when, why, and how often, I guess, too, is,
Yeah.
it wouldn't, shouldn't
Yep.
be somebody, I wouldn't think that has to be here on board with us all the time. Like reviewing everything, possibly, I don't know, just questions, I guess I'm thinking that some of the projects we have won't require someone else maybe looking at them. Others might be questionable, or just everybody like a comfort level, or another set of eyes to look at things.
That's exactly what I'm thinking, Linda, and to dovetail on Dan's point, I think maybe the committee can kind of formulate an understanding as to how we envision, or how the committee envisions this consultant to assist.
Yeah.
How
Oh, good.
often, maybe some of it's a periodic review, only every so many months, but some of it is being available if there's a sudden question that's hard to find the answer to.
And then our committee you were talking about, as far as reviewing projects or whatever, starting on that right away, are you intending to meet weekly, more frequently? How often were you going to be looking at, I guess, these projects? Or
Yeah,
does
I
anybody
mean,
have an idea?
weekly and then as needed. I mean, we right out the gate, we have a lot of work to do, just making sure that we get caught up. So, I mean, weekly at minimum. So we can get, like I said, we're going to have those priority projects that we're going to have to look at, deem eligibility, and kind of get that to the board as soon as possible. So we're going to be working minimum weekly on that. And then once we kind of get through our first phase 1, phase 2 projects, maybe that just changes as we go. So
I think you, Mike, you've touched on this probably a couple of times as far as the dialogue with the board. Maybe that's something as far as the timeline or what's proposed or those types of things you could send out to us so we know what that calendar or timeline is and how.
You bet. And
valuable it
those
is to
committee
us.
meetings, and I apologize, I didn't mean
No,
to
no.
speak over you. Those committee meetings would be public meetings. So, because same reason that policy review is a public meeting.
Sure. I'm just thinking something to help us know, like bullet points for us to know what's in the process or what you're doing and what the timeline is and some of those priority projects, I guess. Either, like you said, to bring it to us publicly in meetings is fine too, but sometimes emails help.
Yeah, I think providing some kind of minutes at the very least, and then perhaps being available for answering questions during board meetings.
Sure, that'd be great. Were you thinking of bringing some of these projects then back to the board with the documentation? Is that how you see, or maybe you haven't had a chance to even work through the process?
yeah, I think that would probably be well. I might defer to Miranda on that, but I think if we were to really pull out these projects that have already been approved, I would think that they would then have to go for reapproval. But I guess I'd kind of defer to Miranda on probably best practice on that.
And I think the committee will have a discussion as to that as well.
Yeah, my initial thoughts would be that if the board was comfortable and approved it, based on the initial request, and the committee's reviewed the subsequent paperwork and feels the documentation is all in place to support the allowability of the grant, I wouldn't think it would necessarily need to go back, but again, that would be something that the committee would need to decide, and then ultimately the board, what you're comfortable with the revised process.
Okay. So ultimately, the board would know that checklist is in place and those documents have been provided or are in place for those projects.
Yeah, and if, like Miranda said, we can just provide updates in a public meeting as well.
With the specific projects. Okay, super. More questions to come, I'm sure. Sorry.
No, there's
Thank you.
going to be a lot of questions that got to be answered along the way, but
Mike, you had a question too once about revisiting the RFPs. Those were good? We're all okay with that, or
So,
did you need to revisit RFPs?
procurement will see some modest changes, but that will just go out to the departments. And some of those changes are because of the changes that we're making to the policy for federal grant procurement. Another one of those changes is simply because the government changed the number it accepts as for an identification number. That was just a change in regulation that literally occurred since we came out with those forms. And finally, to make sure that we reflect what the current small purchase threshold is and micro purchase threshold is, both of which will be changing when we change county grant policy, because what it will do is bring them in line with current federal regulation, and those figures are much higher. For example, the small purchase threshold or the simplified acquisition threshold is currently set by county policy at $25,000. Federal Register sets it at $250,000. Therefore, we want to be in line with that, because what it does is it enables our departments to follow a modified version of state and or county bidding policy for items that fall below that, which is many of these projects.
Okay, thank you. And I know you work with most of the departments with an RFP anyway, so it would be probably involved anyway, so, okay. Makes sense. Thank you.
Anything else?
Does anybody have questions of it?
Any questions from anyone else? Anyone online got questions?
Nope, but I think the committee sounds like a good idea. I appreciate it.
Mike, you got anything else you need, want?
I don't have anything else.
James?
James, you and a group have been meeting on a regular basis, though, right?
Right before vacation, you met a couple times.
So myself, Billy, Jen, and Mike have been meeting with
Yeah.
Miranda and
That's
some
what I was
others,
asking.
and that's yep.
Well,
And so that's kind of what
Thank you.
spurred this, as well as Linda reaching out
No, I'm
to.
glad you, like I said, you made a lot of progress in the last couple of weeks. And I think, yeah, that's great. So thank you.
A lot of behind-the-scenes stuff, then.
We can answer any questions in public that come up on it.
That's fine.
You can meet with Mike
Any-
after the meeting.
Anything else? Moving on to.
Thanks,
any-
Miranda.
Thank you. Certainly let me know if anything comes up. I'm here to help.
Thank you. Any reports or information from the board?
Yeah, just in regard to our assessment and the work we've done with the architects so far, in reviewing the emails, reading the emails, I'd like to get that information to the impacted department heads, because I just feel like a couple of them have been left in the dark as to the process. And it's all public record now, so anybody could request it. So my intent is to share the information in the emails after we had been in executive session, so they can see the vision. I mean, I'm not saying we're going to proceed with this plan as it's laid out, but I sure would like to get some input from the impacted department heads, because maybe we can streamline it and even knock the price down.
Well, then I'd suggest, doing that with Envision, I would think, because I think they were kind of waiting on us before they went to the staff to say, like, hey, this is what the board's kind of looking at for this master plan. And we hadn't done that well for them, so I was going to say we didn't come up with that. But yeah, I mean, they can see what's out there, I guess.
Yeah.
But I thought Envision, I think, was going to go back to them, were they not? Wasn't that the plan, to ask the staff then what they thought of the,
I thought they were gonna do that.
yeah.
Well,
but-
from
Eventually,
my
I think
understanding,
they were waiting for the
as of-
go-ahead
As
from
of
us.
last week, they were looking for the go-ahead from you guys to to see if they're kind of in line with what the board is envisioning.
Because
I wasn't here last
Did you
week,
think
but
that the email
We
that
want
they
to
sent
keep the
to us-
department heads well informed too.
I thought the intent of the email was to probably kind of zero in for us to get down in the weeds, so to speak, and what phases we wanted to do and how much we wanted to spend, and we have questions of James as well. Remember, we said we were waiting, so he had some time to be back last week about the dollars available for whatever we
Money,
wanted to
yep.
use. So those kinds of things.
And they
Yeah.
want to meet with the us individually. They'd prefer face-to-face.
I don't know why we don't do that in public, quite honestly.
I think it'd be good to meet individually, so I think so each one of us feels comfortable in what we want to express to them, and hopefully they can put all 5 of those opinions together and come back with something we can agree on.
I agree.
Maybe. See, I'm thinking that's the part of transparency that we're missing. If they're meeting with each of us individually and then coming back with a plan. Just a question.
I think it
because
helps them. It helps
Oh, I
them
know
with
they're
some
looking
probing
for help.
questions, because I feel like right now they feel as if we may be rudderless.
They're very frustrated. Yeah, I understand that.
I think I would like to hear department head feedback as I narrow in on which of these plans
Priorities.
I really want to go with. So I think I'd like to hear that first instead of going the route of us picking something, then hearing something from
Yeah, I agree. I like that idea. No, I think that's a good idea if that's the right way to go about it. I just thought, but I just thought seeing that overall plan of $23 million was,
Like you
I don't
said,
know how many people want to do it.
Department heads are more comfortable talking one-on-one.
Yeah.
Oh, meet with the department heads?
Well, with us. But I plan to share the latest emails with department heads, just so they can see what's going on.
Sure.
And then they can reach out to us individually or whatever.
I'd say let Envision know at least.
Let's
Kind of
not
not blindside them. We're kind of,
I don't want us to be dead in the water.
oh, hopefully not.
Anything else?
Regarding funding, because I know that was brought up last week as well, you know, I can provide any type of funding documentation you need. If you want to look at 20 million, I can show you 20 million, what that looks like, give you some ideas, put forth some options. If that's too much, then I just need a little bit of direction on where to go for the funding side of things. And then, you know, we can have another discussion on it. We can look at it. I mean, it's totally up to you, but as far as a funding standpoint, maybe narrowing the scope or giving me some parameters, then I can move forward and we can have those discussions.
Yeah, it's tough. I think we were looking at art for part of it, or some of it,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and what dollars we'd have available in that. And I assume the clinic, easily, we can do that in public health, so that's kind of separate. Some of the other portions of it, though, would probably be in lost revenue or have to be in our lost revenue category.
My
Yeah.
price point is about 20 million, with the funding mechanism being hybrid: reserves, bonding, and ARPA.
Yeah, we have about $14 million of ARP funds that we have left to allocate, and a good chunk of that is lost revenue, about 8.9, and the remaining would be having to fit within these ARP guidelines. So
Yeah.
I do agree with Dan, you know, if we go down this road, it's maybe a hybrid of funding.
And I think we had a pretty open timeline. There was no timeline, I didn't think, given. I think that was kind of what everybody's a little bit wary of. We could make this be a long term, or we could do it in a shorter term. Did you have any thoughts or ideas on the 23 million and how many years?
I think the committee is going to be useful for us in vetting this process, setting up timelines, providing us with recommendations, and I think all of us need to stay abreast to the committee's actions so we can formulate a final decision.
Oh, from the dollars for space, for buildings?
Yes.
And I don't
Does
want
that
to
answer
see us
your
put a
question?
cap on it either, you know, because there's some projects that need to be looked at that may fall by the wayside, and I'd hate to see that.
Yeah.
Just my opinion.
No, well, that's what, yeah. Hopefully that's what
Anything
the
else?
individual ones do then.
Yeah. I guess got one other thing. The Drake Relays was last weekend. Local teams did pretty good. But what was interesting, right before one of the races for Cedar Falls kids, they had Special Olympics, and the Goodwill team from Waterloo won 4x100 at the Drake Relays. So it's something for them to be proud of.
For sure.
With that, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved?
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thought we might have lost it. I thought